Symbolic history through sight and sound. 40. Now. The rooted future. The task of the now has been to suspend the autumnal flush of death-fired modernity on the pool of being, reflecting surface of perception and memory, art and knowledge, plaintive as Machaut's Las, comment oublierais? When the earth life of Genesis returns to chaos, whither midst falling dew, what Whitman voiced will apply, a yea pole of truth. Soul, we have positively appeared, that is enough. Or Rilke, but this, once to have been, if once only earthly to have been, seems irrevocable. Who will sound the nay truth, irrevocable, and spoiled my vineyard? Who demur like Job? Lord, in a faulted universe, the slopes of concord dissonant? Who trusts the whirlwind? On that field of force I dance the flame of delight. In the possession and search of now, consciousness throned over all, yet reaching beyond in overreach, this Xerxes, seated as above Salamis, watching the destruction of his fleets and armies, the convergence of inner and outer, the small and great I am, Azur Nazarpal, in double, under the winged God, and with winged helpers, tending the tree of life. Such consciousness decreed two closing shows, Alpha of self, consuming and transcending self, Omega of world, negating and affirming world. Could either compass the timeless, but by a time plot, spirit veiled in a radiance of rumored acts and tales, as with Buddha, Christ, or Dante's held to heaven climb. So clouds take the sunset in the transcendental landscape, whether painted or rendered on film. For the Alpha show, its time plot was personal. My own windmill jousts, aimed like Don Quixote's at those high follies of Erasmus. In such vein Jack Good turned me at 70 to a lusty school of lippy monk. Vixi, visi, vibri, I lived, I saw, I vibrated. At the same birthday he charmed us with an ironic video. Silence that dreadful bell. Soon enough, first let it peal the imperative my Alpha failed to record, that the now task for each I am is to give itself, mind, heart, and body, to the feedback suspensions and paradox purposes of nature and history, of man, earth, cosmos, to make of that science a moral discipline and love abandon, as in too late Blake designs, old Job recounting his trials to his daughters, Dante whirled in the crucifixion giving of the fiery Christ. Thus, to work with compassion here, for sanity individual, global, yet side mystically there, with the whole which requires our sacrifice. Again music swelling from Gothic lament to Renaissance command, Taverner's in nomine. The Omega with that Alpha should have brought symbolic history to a final rounding of the wheel, to draw space-time, world, soul into Olympian awareness of its sacramental role, Una Hanbury's bronze phoenix taking flight from its pyre above Santa Fe. How moving, in the Rohan Pietà, the reverent accusation of a God who has made and shared in world tragedy, Mary fainting to the dead body of Christ, John thrusting out his lip as in scorn. Is this what you had in mind? And what can the Father's gesture mean but, be it on my head, I suffer with you, her, and with him? It is Whitman's both in and out of the game. And where, in Michelangelo's Titanic ceiling, is eternity nearer than in its homeliest observation? Among ancestors of Christ, this mother's rapt devotion as she rocks with her foot the cradle of an older child, meanwhile tending the younger on her lap. But that Omega ran out of time, on the threshold of a future rooted in past and present, undivided province of the now. Is there a succession to Alpha and Omega? Hardly. Yet it was with a variant of the burning Kuwaiti oil fields that we extended our double now to a third, hung between rooted future and kingdom come. We had joined time the wheel and time the arrow in the pulsing and abiding flow of consciousness, the shaping mystery of energy itself, what crops out, one and many, seeking and contained at every level of the cosmic stair, mineral, vegetable, animate. Compare the social evolution of ants with that of primates, including man, both features of the Cenozoic after the disappearance of dinosaurs. This Upper Cretaceous worker, preserved in sequoia amber, is of the oldest ant group, resembling aculeate wasps, stem of anthill divergence. Although that transformation is less of individuals than of colony, we feel in the acute sentience of this weaver ant worker, assuming a threat display, the myrmidon intelligence, which lets these Lilliputians, by tactile and chemical signs, link themselves in bands and chains to fold a leaf which they will sew together using the spun thread of their own web-secreting larvae. The same time span has brought primates from Mesozoic mammals, marsupial and placental, through Cenozoic lemurs and tarsiers, with all those simians now endangered in tropical jungles, this scarlet-faced uakari of the Amazon, to the swiftly evolving branches of the family of man. Surely, from ancestral ant to weavers is a cybernetic elaboration in some way cognate to that which has pushed forest hunters through the states and empires of history, to our computer networks and control centers, seeding themselves through government, markets, traffic, communications. What appears is the knitting of some world nerve system, though its job seems still the pushing and reporting of partisan trade and battle. Who dreams this nerve net might be attached to any global brain? Thus, with ants as with men, we have scarcely a clue whether the organizational drive of history, this conscious or unconscious urge to the collective, is trained on Odyssean homecoming or on habitual war, as of these Amazon raiders plying a pupae theft of scarlet from black. Has the Greek life force of the Iliad become our death urge? Yet who can deny its reality? My younger brother Percy tried. It was another nature he imaged at Sewanee, in poems and miniatures, to fly with ephemerids, ephemeral poor boy, fairy insects, ingonji in the summer twilight, or insect fairies, the summer fairy bids the ferns awake, cherished fantasies, which by 1937 left him so vulnerable to between wars, college courses, his own rebel glands, asthma, schizophrenic dread, dreams of a night train inexorably bearing down, this captioned watercolor, boys being carried drowned in the arms of a strong man, that he slid to suicide as into a spider's web, though pearled with dew. If a thinking being can be so seized, why not the barely thinking, demonically driven, energy-fevered life of Earth? So we are brought back to the archetype of tragic myth, Niobe's overweening boast, her daughters felled by the arrows of Artemis, such the satyr wisdom of the Greeks. Such Titian's most tragic enigma, Marsyas flayed for vaunting the frenzy of blown pipes over the reasoned harmony of Apollo's lyre. Apollo death-chanting, here to the viola da braccia, in Dionysiac rapture, O pure, fire, dance leader of the throbbing stars, night child of God, blaze for us. Has this Mycenaean dagger of the chase, 1500 B.C., fresh as the myths of Hercules or the tale of Odysseus, how with the sons of Autolycus he hunted the boar in the forests of Parnassus, has this blade taken revenge on the world? For when Faulkner blazons the brave sport in the Bear, the whole saga becomes a thunderstorm death of the woods, miscarriage of heroism, mercenary corruption and rape of earth and man. The only yea left is Nietzschean, the light-flashing energy of the storm itself, of Faulkner's syntactical and verbal hurricane. With the devastation of Birchfield's northern sun and rock, wrenched under the sway of Sibelius from a youthful sketch, let Faulkner's Mississippi contemporaries Walter Anderson and Maria Hall, though none is a match for the Bear, be hurled into the vast breach of that fable. Mad Anderson's 1960 Birds at Sunset, this mild Hull abstraction of 1965, which from its title, Burning Off, must also deal with the forest destruction. Though the woods I saw girdled and fired all my youth were recognizably of the now cleared delta floodplain of the Bear. Does what we have said of Faulkner imply condemnation, as of all threatening arts, the modern, crushing forms to energy, liberation of the dissonance, blues, beat, this Epstein, rock drill, Pound's furious cantos of the same name, perhaps these very shows? In part, but reality has its own imperative. History is no sweet shop where we can pick and choose. Some say, Michelangelo's too much for me, or Lear, and there's Beethoven, Blake, Melville, and my God, symbolic history, to whom a storm universe makes answer, tant pis pour vous. It may be that in all great exploratory ventures and monuments, overweening and terror are ingredient. Such sacrificial demand as brought live human hearts to the god bowl on the belly of this chalk mole, fronting the Chichen Itza temple of warriors, about when the first crusades signed the awakening might of Christendom. In later Europe, there is a distancing of soul from the earth it seeks, travels to, and would romantically affirm. What throws a surreal chill over this Hans Thoma landscape of 1887, called Memory of a Place, where Germanic Faust soul still hungers for some visionary south. To boost the alienation to the space of super-science, we have only to search out a window seat in the North Tower restaurant of the World Trade Center and fix on a city which has gone beyond nature altogether, though its landscape also could be called Memory of a Place. But whether looking down or up, and whatever the architects wish to rival on our shores the convivial piazza of San Marco, this square is transhuman and interplanetary, Cape Canaveral's space launch of Time the Arrow. Remember, the takeoff will be fiery, not without danger. The goal, orbiting station or lunar observatory, inhospitable to earthlings, while time, as inexorable wheel, leaves behind us an earth shambles, cathedral stone melting in the fumes of internal combustion, combustion engines strewn in the anarchy of junking and war. Only 5,000 years ago, Stone Age settlers on the virgin shore of Orkney built Skara Brae, a 10-house village long buried under sand, a simple Arcadian time. And yet how soon the woods of that main island were consumed. Society slipped back, until later settlers, Picts and Vikings, came to cut and burn the glacial deposits of peat. Already the future was rooted in fossil fuel. Have we not marked, from the prophets to now, separations and fusions of that wheel and arrow complementarity, dead beat of the cyclical lift-off of kingdom come, both mounting about 1900 to a post-romantic, post-Nietzschean pitch of violence and ecstasy? So in Munch's Summer Night on Oslo Fjord, type of Nordic symbolism, this island like Earth's sinister smiling mouth, or in music, here from the close of the Fourth Symphony, 1916, by the once neglected Dane Carl Nielsen, the grim wheel and ecstatic arrow fuse. Everywhere the death reiterance of return, man, grass of the field, from 15th century effigies of decaying corpses, sometimes with worms poking through the flesh, to wasted victims of AIDS in that global plague. As if the wheel of time were rounding for our way of life, shambles of inner city dope slums, this black mother smoking crack while the crack baby howls. Can the crisis of earth fever twist every warning and promise of the past toward self-destruction? Vico's cycles might have promoted historical caution and responsibility, but we have seen Spengler's decline and fall stir Hitler and his Nazis to a crazy opposite, to shore up with rabid force the big top of the West. How suicidal the results previous shows have indicated. Here we invite a last witness, the ebullient Stuart Boyd, Scotch paratrooper, dropped in the blunder of a bridge too far, so captured and penned through cloud cold and near starvation in a prison camp, the scene revived 40 years after by memory and art. At the same time, the trial of the Jews had become as real to him as his own. In this painting called The Last Train, he turned inner sight to another camp, like his, but for extermination. Such the miscarriage of Vico's wheel of time. As for time, the arrow, what euphoria of opulent hope was seeded by the victorious crusades of the peace-loving peoples. Here, nuclear release and the ruins of Nagasaki. It was a euphoria actually heightened by Cold War. Schoeffer, exiled Hungarian, active in Paris, thrilled like some naive Art Frankenstein to our scientific excitement. This studio of structures and gadgets, lights and music, a laboratory of what he called electronic luminodynamism, symbol of the Earth program, to consume and burn all known resources, forests, waters, ores, fossil fuels, in a population burst and radiance of life display, as huge, indulgent, and awesome as Kokoschka's myth of Prometheus, centerpiece of an apocalypse affirmation of man. Surely the tragic light burst of Prometheus was a bonfire against our supernova of energy. Let us scan for the last time the Western complicity in Messianic and Faustian. Dawn, Joachim's 12th century vision of a coming age of spirit, God's kingdom in the here and now, is suggested wherever the new Romanesque gives smiling mystery to the earth and man. This prophet from Saint-Loup-de-Neau, southeast of Paris, with a chant by Léonin. The 15th century turn of the Van Eyck altarpiece, the Lamb of God adored in a paradise of earth by the ranks of this world and the world to come, pairs with the sensuous soaring of Dunstable's heavenly harmonies, Come, Holy Spirit, prior fulfillment of what Hegel would claim for his Germany, the actualization in man, personal and social, of spirit as innately free. Though by the time Hegel had burdened consciousness with his poisoned draught of completion, the sacred coming had lured Gretchen and Helen into Faustian compact. Moreau's later summons to Yeats, a shudder in the loins engenders there the broken wall, the burning roof and tower, and Agamemnon dead. The god rape to sire another age of mythic passion. But imagine Yeats' scorn could he have seen that expected overthrow and renewal spill out in the corny miscarriage of hippie abandon, mass perversion of romantic hope, which would turn inadequate woodlots, parks, and forests to hog farm camps and jazz the street of Berkeley to a pathos of wasted lives. Such the latest betrayal of Time the Arrow. In Piero della Francesca's Legend of the True Cross, it is at Adam's death that a seed from the tree of the fall must be planted under his tongue. From it will grow, as shown, the spreading tree of redemption, from which Christ's cross is to be hewn. In the foreground group center, a woman lifts her arms in a kind of crucifixion ecstasy. By dialectic modifications of such an arm-spread gesture, Blake would make a language of soul states, prophetic for the now and future. This pair of glad day and of Los in Flames pursues revolutionary hope. Dawn innocence of freedom and joy, energy is eternal delight. Into material battle, imagination at the forge of experience, wrapped in the equivocal fires of mental fight. The wine-press of Los is called war on earth. In another Blakean pair, the Glad Herald, here the 1790 engraving, fiercens to elemental fire. On this limb of the cross of energy, Luva, king of love, thou art king of war and death. Liberty veers, not to a Blake Los of creative toil, but to the flaming orc of temporal and political rebellion, called a dragon and demon by all establishment, and indeed assuming that frenzied aspect. In this satanic change we feel the downward rotation of the palms, the arms stiffening, the flesh of the loins scaling over. We have the adversary and tempter pouring the vial of affliction on Job, yet still a creative force uprooting the old for the new, ambiguous as the serpent and forbidden fruit of Genesis, or in the looming earth crisis, the science of knowledge as power. Here radical orc descended into the state of Satan, concretes, reactionary, toward his Blakean antinomy, the bearded authority against which he rebelled, jealous Urizen, fallen Zoa of reason, limit, the rigid laws of the material world, this old nobodaddy of lightning and the scroll of prohibition, who countenances the death house of status quo. Such the reversals exhibited by religions, revolutions, or today by a World Bank net of gain, gray and hoary dark, which Adam Smith's once glowing enterprise now casts over nature itself. All this by a shifting of the cruciform spread from fierce attack to repressive, cruel acceptance. For Blake, this is the Old Testament angry God of this world, a sacrificial selfhood, worshipped as God by the mighty ones of the earth. Moses beheld on Sinai forms of dark delusion. So many tribal faiths that powered earlier history and are become its liabilities, bigoted, partisan, eschewing sense, espousing hate, war gods tom-tomming against the viable, to pray to Allah as one fires a nation's oil. Here, one such, from above, threatens the redeemed humanity, though even that Christ has come too often into Babylonian captivity. What need for a new dispensation, an earth avatar? Just such a change as of glad day to Satan, or of our science from hope to danger, is attested by the eagle, bird of inspiration. When thou seest an eagle, thou seest a portion of genius. Lift up thy head. And bird of prey, torturing Prometheus. On a page of the marriage of heaven and hell, the eagle, touched with dawn, lifts the serpent of materialism. But in the vision of the daughters of Albion, Blake has only to turn the spread wings down to produce the satanic spectre, a vulture eagle tearing at Othone, who has plucked the sexual flower. So the transformation of the eagle is crucial. Blake's zero moment in prophetic history, the eagle returns from nightly prey and lifts his golden beak to the pure east, shaking the dust from his immortal pinions to awake the sun that sleeps too long. Thus, in the great plate from Milton, where Albion and Jerusalem sleep on the rock of ages over the sea of time and space, that sleep, the fact of history, our descent into this skull cave of Ulro, the eagle hangs above, ambivalent as all the fire and dragon forms of energy in the vegetative universe. Is that hooked beak and pointed tongue to tear flesh, or to cry with the warning voice of the Apostle John, his sign the eagle, of the Son of Man, from whose mouth went a sharp, two-edged sword? The text answers, trumpets innumerable, sounding articulate, awake, Albion, awake, let the four Zoas awake from slumbers of 6,000 years. Though whether our eagle